Now
Got
you're
it.
recording.
I guess Bob initiated that, bless his heart. Okay, so let's go ahead and just get started. Thanks, Bob. I think you made me co-host. Is that correct, Bob? Okay, yeah, you're muted. Someone named Carlo came and has gone. I don't know if they'll try to come back. This is a January 7th meeting. I'm sharing my screen. This is the page at the Green Liberty Caucus. The purpose of this meeting. Technically, this is hosted by the Conventions Committee, and as one of the goals of the Convention Committee, from my perspective, is that the Green Party, we host conventions. This is where we do our business. This is where people come and make appeals, and we discuss and process any major, bylaws changes, seeking resolutions, and so on. And so, what is present here are Green Liberty Caucus resolutions, and a resolution is a lower bar. And is not a bylaws change, which requires the 2/3 and so on. So these are these are items that I think are important to advance a Green Liberty Caucus possibility. So what I'm going to do is simply scroll down, and this is where the agenda items. Now, one of the problems is that in our caucus, in our conventions, is we don't have time. We run out of time to talk, and one of our goals is to strive for consensus. So right now, we have a group. I think we're mostly Green Liberty Caucus people. I don't think there's going to be any let me see, blocking on this. Bob is welcome to give us his perspective in anticipation of what people might say in convention. But we need to be talking. So let me see here. So again, this meeting is being recorded. The first resolution. So let's just take a moment and just have everybody kind of just, you can either wave a hand, you can practice using I can't even find on my list here the thumbs up, the reactions. I have to go search for my reactions. I think maybe we could use the hand raising one to get attention if we want to share and talk. And here's the raise hand, and then the raise hand is removed by lowering the hand. It's at the bottom, so we can select through there and do that as a way to get attention. I do see that someone has put a note in the chat, so the chat is working. So basically, this first, I'm going to just, let's do this. Would everyone go around and just say hello and just kind of give a very brief introduction to yourself, your involvement in Green Party, and maybe even why you're here today. So you guys know why I'm here. I'm advancing this Green Liberty Caucus conversation about agenda items for the convention on January 21st. Marv, can you just kind of say hello and give us a brief intro?
Say again?
Just a brief introduction from yourself.
Oh, well, I'm Marv Sanis. I live in Salem. I've fooled around this Pacific Green Party since 2016. I ran for the U.S. House of Representatives in 2016, represented the Pacific Green Party, trying to get 9/11 on the ballot along with a few other issues. Did it again in 2018.
Wow.
I spent about $5,000 in 2016, spent about $10,000 in 2018. 9/11, I got donations, small donations from all over the state of Oregon in 2016 and 2018. I got about 1,000. No, I got about 800 in 2016 and about 700 in 2018. You know how much support I got from the Pacific Green Party for those 2 runs?
How much, Marv?
0, not 10 cents. How much did Dan get? He ran in this last cycle and a lot of effort, a lot of his own money. I don't think he got a dime. So anyway, we got to do something about this. Party has become irrelevant. I don't think I am a supporting member. I don't give them $35. They've become irrelevant. I say this all the time. We had 10,000 20 years ago in a body politic of 1.8 million. Today we have 7,900 in a body politic of 3 million. So I don't know. I don't know. We certainly are not attractive.
Okay, well, we can talk about.
I come here to encourage you, Chuck, because you are active and you're putting some effort into this group. Oh, and there's Natalie. She puts effort in. There's very few people that I see put effort in. Dan puts a lot of effort in, gets no support. Marvin has run twice, gets no support. So anyway, we've either got to. Anyway, I'm just here to encourage you, Chuck. So
thanks, Marv.
Thanks.
Good. And I didn't quite know your history of throwing your hat in the ring, as it were. Natalie, we're just doing a quick go around and letting people say hi and make brief introductions, and then we're going to just jump right in here. Jack, you want to make a quick introduction?
Well, yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with Marv.
Hey, Jack, you and Mariah have some feedback going on. Someone's going to have to mute when the other's talking.
Okay. Is that any better now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, I want to, it's kind of the political situation in the United States is desperate. The major parties are absolutely, totally corrupted and have been for a long time. And I just see the Green Party as doing nothing whatsoever, as representing no original, no challenging sort of positions on anything important. But I don't see any other choice. It's kind of a default. I've been in the party about the same length of time as Marv. I think we were at our first state meeting together, a state conference in Salem, as I recall. So the great issues of our history, of our 20th century history, are just continuing to go unaddressed. We have private individuals who are doing heroic kinds of research on these seminal events that have shaped our history, and they remain unofficial, and they're not taught in the school books. So we have William Pepper, who has written 3 books now on the MLK assassination. He actually conducted a lawsuit in 1999 that found the United States government guilty of the murder of Martin Luther King. The facts are abundant. They're absolutely huge. The 3 books he's written have all, they've been published as new evidence has emerged, on and on and on. And the United States government remains untouched. The same thing is true with Malcolm X. Carl Evans has done significant investigation of this. The assassination of Robert Kennedy is the same thing. Robert Kennedy was killed from behind. He was not killed by Sirhan Sirhan, and yet Sirhan Sirhan remains in prison.
Hey, Bob, I'm going to interrupt you. We don't have time to go into a litany of history. We just want to do a brief say hello, introduce yourself.
Okay, anyway, I'm just saying, I'm pointing out that the great issues of the 20th century American history have gone unaddressed and unrecognized, and somebody better goddamn step up to the plate and do something.
Thank you, Jack. Mariah, can you give us a brief intro? Just say hi and just briefly. And Jack, you should mute if Mariah speaks up. Yeah. And if Mariah is not available, Dan, can you just make a brief intro?
Yeah, I'm Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Damn it, wait a second. Mariah's on her, I guess on her phone. Okay. Oh no, she can't talk because her computer has no microphone.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Natalie, welcome. You want to make just a brief intro? Say hi.
Morning. We all know each other. Nice to see you. Happy New Year.
That's fine. You're welcome. So here's what's going on. The agenda is, I'm pulling it from the Green Liberty Caucus site. There's an article that highlights this, and using in the spirit of striving for consensus, we need time to talk, and that's why we're having this meeting. So Green Liberty has a slate of requests for resolutions. The first one.
What are the time for all the different items? Because I cannot stay for 3 hours. I'm going to be for about an hour, so I'm at
That's
just
fine.
jumping.
I think we can review this in an hour, Natalie. I think we can. I don't think this is going to go on that long, frankly. So this is something that was discussed in August. No, it was another convention. I don't even remember which one. It was a convention, and we took a vote on OPA vote, and it didn't get the majority. It was a confused OPA vote. We don't really know what. In any case, nothing came of this. This is a proposal to send to the Green Party National Committee to ask them to create a standing committee that would be dedicated to corporate accountability, transparency, protection for whistleblowers. These are the same themes that drive the Green Liberty Caucus in its resistance to corruption and building our democracy. You can't do that unless there's accountability. So again, this is a request from Oregon to the National Committee. And the National Committee has their process that they would go through to entertain this idea, and it would be voted on. There'll be discussion and so on. So you can go to, I think if I click here, this is my blog. This resolution is all laid out in the manner that they require. So what I'm asking for is there anybody that would block this proposal in convention? Anyone would block? Is anybody opposed? And pray tell why this should be blocked. That's the process. And if you block, then the request would be, well, kind of why is this not appropriate? And then two, is there something that would be adjusted to make you stand aside? That's the process. Can anybody, so this is now open. People can raise their hand and be recognized and speak.
Chuck, could you scroll down to the second item? I've read one, but yeah, thank you.
The second, this is the 60s assassinations. So, but let's just, Bob, you're not in Green Liberty Caucus. Would you oppose this request for a resolution?
Chuck, if you look at the participants, I've had my hand up.
Okay, I can't see that. My thing's not showing. Bob, you need to back me up here and help
So
me.
if you click on participants there further down
There.
from your mouse. Further down. If you look on the black ribbon at the bottom, you'll see participants.
Yep,
Click on it.
right there. Oh, there it is. I see your hand. Natalie, go ahead. You have your hand up. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm not opposed to having a committee to look into it and so on and so on. I would be opposed to bringing it to the national because the national is already struggling with the various committees, getting things going, the campaigns, etc. And I think that this will be a burden on the national, and it's not going to get traction on the national. I think that you're much better off doing your own committee, getting people on board, starting some, some projects or whatever you want to do with this caucus, because it's not clear what the caucus. I mean, I understand the concept, right? We're all on board. It's a no-brainer. But in terms of what the work that it would entail, it's really not clear. And what are the resources and so on? You might want to look into the format to submit proposals. It's it's been distributed before, and it's also in our Google Drive under the SCC, and it will give you. And it will give you an idea of. Oh, okay, that's what you're. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's not clear to me what you want to do with the committee. So because I don't see any work. What I would do is I would do the work locally and demonstrate that there's a need for it. I mean, even if it's on federal issues, get your group going on this, and before sending it to the national, because it's going to get voted down at the national. It's just not practical as an idea right now.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. I hear you. Any other thoughts on this? I mean, Natalie just expressed that, who knows? I mean, but if it was brought to the national, be shot down, it wouldn't get any traction. That's the argument against.
And it would just bog down again into another discussion. I mean, we're not opposed to the principle. It's just forming of a committee that it may not be necessary.
Any other thoughts from anyone else?
The point I would make, Chuck and Natalie, is we should encourage. Here you have 1, 2, 3, 4. The people that are doing something, they should be encouraged.
I do.
Anything the Pacific Green Party does right now should be encouraged.
I do. I didn't say that it's not a bad idea. I just say what I'm saying is just try to do it locally, individually, by yourself, on your own, maybe even connecting it with other people at the national and try to do something about it rather than just create a committee. Because then it's just another structure out there that's just sitting around.
You're obstructing. You're obstructing. You're not encouraging.
I am not obstructing. I'm redirecting.
Okay.
You say but.
Marv.
But. Good idea, Chuck.
Redirecting.
Yeah, you're not encouraging them at all.
Nevertheless,
Marv, let's not argue this point.
Nevertheless, to make it more effective, I would suggest to work on it first and get something off the ground. So now I'm not using but I'm saying I support the idea. Nevertheless, I suggest to do something on the ground, a project or something that demonstrates that this is going to be a functional committee and not just another structure that's going to be sitting out there.
Okay, fair enough.
What about this morning? What about this morning, Natalie?
Hey,
right
Marv,
now. What
are you
right now?
Are you? I don't understand what you're asking me.
Encourage what Chuck is trying to do. Encourage.
I support the idea. I think it's a fantastic idea. We work on these issues all the time. I support the idea. Nevertheless, the format that you're trying to function is the way that you're trying to implement your idea may not be very effective. And I would suggest for you to work on a project or to work on something that would demonstrate that the creation of a committee is justified. And so I augment your idea by proposing an avenue to make it more effective. Because if you bring this to the national as to form a committee, I can almost guarantee you that it's going to go into this very long, convoluted, with 50 states people discussion, and nothing is going to come out of it. So I support very strongly your idea, and I'm on board of it. I think it's a great idea. Nevertheless, to make it more effective, I don't think that calling for the formation of a committee at the national level is the best way to implement it.
Okay.
How is that, Marvin?
Hey, Marv, I'm tracking what Natalie's saying, and Marv's asking for encouragement. I'm going to accept what Natalie's representing, that this is not necessarily discouragement, but it's skepticism that it would be well received at the national level, short having some track record doing the work of demanding accountability. And that's fair. So let's just we're not going to take a vote right now, but this is out there. And it could be that we do come back to it after some accomplishment. And that's not a bad idea. I'm not going to dismiss that or anything. I just,
it could be that you form an alliance with 3 or 4 other states or 10, 12 other people, and that you guys start working on a project, and that out of that project, the idea of a committee will become much more, powerful, effective, etc. So I'm really trying to show you a way to make it a reality and not just create a committee that's going to sit on a paper.
Okay, I don't want a committee that's going to sit on the sidelines, Natalie.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Dan has his hand up. Dan, would you please share?
Yeah. Okay. National does nothing but make committees for this, committees for that. It does not matter to me whether National actually creates this committee or not. I think the point of this, in my view, is to get this into the conversation and get people talking about it. That alone will be a success. And
what to talk about it? Talk about what?
These agenda
proposal,
items.
Natalie.
Start having a conversation about government and corporate accountability.
Yeah,
I would like to. I would like.
Would
you please not interrupt me?
Yeah. I'm not clear what you're talking about.
Well, let me finish talking then. I'd like to add, in particular, the topic of Julian Assange to this. We can add things that make it, that get people's attention and make it more current.
Okay.
What I'm hearing, what I just heard from Natalie is that is a suggestion that we go through some long process of a project in advance of proposing a committee, which to me is just silly. It just buries this in endless process that has already been going on for over a year now, hasn't it, Chuck, that you've been working on this? There's already a lot of people behind this. I see no reason not to go forward with it as it is.
So my question to you then was, when you say that there's been already a lot of work on this, do you mean a lot of work on whistleblower accountability, that sort of thing, or a lot of work on the creation of a committee? That's what I was not clear about.
Well, this was proposed in convention, I think about a year ago already. And
it was voted down.
And it's going to be proposed again. Okay. And you've come up with a block that apparently doesn't seem like a block. There's like you're proposing an alternative, which would involve a lot more effort and red tape, instead of just simply cutting to the chase and going to national and saying, hey, this is an important issue. This is something the Green Party should be focused on. A lot of people around the country are going to agree with that. It doesn't really matter if they come up with a formal committee to investigate it or not. We need to be pushing the party in that direction because it is the right direction.
Yeah, I was not clear because you started by saying that the national creates committees that don't do anything. So I understood that you did not really support the creation of another national committee.
I support
That's why I was very confused about your intervention.
It wasn't an intervention. I'm just taking my turn to talk.
Okay.
I don't believe I was responding to anyone.
Well, let me jump in, Dan. And what Dan is basically saying is he's not impressed with the national, and that the national necessarily produces very much for given all of the committees it has. So that's his opinion. We're not going to debate whether the national is effective or not, but what Dan is observing is that this has been introduced. It has been to some extent in the Green Party or in Oregon for conversation. Natalie's saying it wouldn't be well received. Dan is basically saying, go for it. Test the waters, advance the conversation. No real harm could be done. That's what I hear Dan saying. Is that kind of accurate, Dan?
Yes, and if they do happen to create a committee about it that actually does something, that's great.
Well,
we can't worry too much about whether a national committee is going to do anything, because we know what national is like. But why not? It might actually go somewhere.
Okay, good point. Thank you, Dan. I think that's helpful. It makes sense. Anybody else want to share on this point of the resolution?
Well, I've had my hand up for a while.
Okay, go for it, Jack.
Well, first of all, I want to direct your attention to the chat, because since Mariah doesn't have a microphone, she puts her comments in the chat, and she's had some important comments there about the effort by to sabotage this that is likely to, especially the medical freedom component. And she's pointing out that there are already lawsuits to have to see INFBI documents released about these things. So there are other people that are way, way ahead of us on this. Napoli acts like nobody knows anything about this, that there's never been any work done on it. My God, don't interrupt, please. There are very, very important books. A huge amount of research has been done on it by private individuals who have enough, patriotism to want to spend hours and days and months and years of their lives putting together all this information they've assembled. It's right there. And these are the basis of some of the lawsuits that are already filed. In the meantime, the Green Party just sits on its hands and acts as if, nothing's going on. Oh, well, it's going to take a lot of time to research all this. No, it isn't. You got to read a few books, that's all. There's other people that have done all this research. And these are the events, these are the seminal events that have shaped our nation in modern times. And they all point to one thing, and that is the criminality of our leaders. And that basic fact needs to be exposed if we're ever going to have any sort of a respectable country. We are the shame of the world. I have been ashamed to be an American for at least 20, 30 years now. When I've gone to international conferences, I wear a maple leaf pin so people will think I'm Canadian. Really, I mean, this is monstrous. And to act so naive, like, oh, well, this is all brand new. Right now, as of now, only 38% of the public believe the Warren report. There's 50% of the public that actively reject the Warren report. Even after all this time, with all these people alive today who weren't even alive then. So where is the Green Party? We could be attracting people by being out in front of this, along with so many others. 50% of the population doesn't believe it. So Jack, we could be attracting that 50%, couldn't we? Because the Republicans don't and the Democrats don't.
So Jack, you're affirming, you're making an argument that the Green Party should advance a committee dedicated to accountability, transparency, and whistleblower protection.
Well, of course.
And I think just to go back to Dan's point, there's so many issues to choose from. It's overwhelming. And Dan simply asserts that we really need to be stronger in elevating Julian Assange's situation. And there's a consensus for that. There's an absolute consensus to defend Julian Assange from the Espionage Act and so on. So so Natalie, do you have your hand up? Did you want to remark? Okay. So, hey, you guys, in the interest of time, let's keep. Natalie, go ahead.
No, somebody has their hand up, but it's not me.
Okay. Is that Bob?
Yeah, I've had my hand up for about 15 minutes now, which apparently you did not see.
Please share, Bob.
Yeah, what I was going to say was I've got no problem with number one on there, yeah, because I think that it's a good idea to investigate these things for accountability. But I do have a problem with your number two, because basically you're saying before we have these investigations, we've already concluded this is the case.
Okay, Bob,
I don't think that's a winning thing. I think two is, I think you can list, there are many items that people, find questionable, but in the second one, you're saying, well, we already know the answer to this. So you're basically biasing the investigation. So, and I mean, I think there's probably a reason for that. I mean, I think we should be investigating these things, but I think it would be an error for us to conclude when we're saying we should look into these that we already know the answer.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. I think looking into this is a good idea.
Okay.
And something we should do, but I don't think that we should put out a proposal that says, well, we know this was, Kennedy was assassinated by the CIA or, whatever.
Okay. So here's what I'm going to
That's all I wanted to say on this.
Bob, thank you very much. Go ahead and take your hand down so that we're not confused.
Chuck.
I see that Amy Sachs has her hand up, and so does Natalie.
Okay.
So maybe people want to respond to because what Bob just did is introduce the second agenda item, and so I'm ready to go into the second agenda item. However, let's finish up on talking about the first one, whether there would be a proposal to advance a committee to the national whether we do it or we don't do it. Amy Sachs, please share.
Good morning. I guess I've just had my question answered because I was a couple of minutes late and I thought I'd missed us already covering number two, which I couldn't see. So carry on. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Amy.
Good to see everyone.
Okay, welcome. Natalie, do you have a final thought? Okay, let's go into number two. So basically, I this is good. I mean, thank you, Bob. And I think so. Let's go into number two. The second one is a proposal resolution to endorse the call for Congress to investigate all of the 60s assassinations. And no, Bob, nobody's necessarily claiming that they know exactly what happened. This click here shows a very interesting discussion. I don't even know who this outfit is, but this is a very thorough review and conversation about who has signed on to this Truth and Reconciliation Committee. So Robert Kennedy Jr. has signed on. There's a number of people, prominent individuals have signed on. This is calling for investigations. There is a law that says that all of the information about JFK should be released to the public by 1995, I think. And here we are, 2021, and national security state operators are filing reasons to keep stuff redacted and not reveal the truth around JFK. None of this, Bob, is saying we know what happened. They're saying it remains opaque. We don't know, and we're entitled to know. We need to have an investigation on this. And let me just say this about why I'm advancing this one is because I'm convinced that today, the problems we're experiencing today, and we can get to this when we get to the medical freedom about the COVID, it's people in state agencies are acting without accountability. They are committing and we're not going to hash and debate this. I mean, but the failure to be accountable, to hold people to account, the failure to insist on the truth around JFK and the assassinations in the 60s created a condition that led to that enabled, I'm going to just say this, deep state operators to affect the 9/11 event, which further remains in need of investigation. There's no discussion in any of these proposals about 9/11. We can come back to that in another future date. This is a very seemingly, in my opinion, not problematic. I think that this should be recognized as this is a good organization. They have it's a well-crafted call investigation these events. Okay, I'm talking. Anybody think of a reason why the resolution to be a signatory to this call from the American Truth and Reconciliation Committee? Chuck out. Raise your hand. And this is kind of asking for a block in the spirit of striving for consensus. Is there anybody who could see why we should block this? Okay, is anybody a stand aside and just doesn't really kind of like this, but wouldn't block?
What vote are you calling for?
This is number 2 on the agenda. This is about the American Truth and Reconciliation Committee for the Pacific Green Party to be a signatory to this call for investigations. So this is number 2 in the proposals here.
I would have to look at those who is involved in that and all of that stuff, because I don't think it's a priority right now.
Okay, so would you do a block on that, or would you just stand aside, Natalie?
This is a Liberty Caucus thing. It's not, I'm not going to vote in or favor or oppose. I'm going to vote, if it goes to the convention, I'm just going to vote at the convention.
Well, okay, well, that's fine. But in the spirit of consensus, so when we get to convention, we're not going to have time to talk because our agenda is always so shortened. So this is an opportunity. What? I can put this in the chat if anyone wants. This is actually the better one. This is has a higher quality explanation. I just put that one in the chat. I'll put the other one in the chat too. These are, I think that what would happen here is, nothing might come of this. If the Green Party becomes a signatory to say we want investigations, then this is a resolution that says we should investigate this. We're not going to stick our heads in the sand about it. And the benefit to bearing witness that we haven't gotten justice then represents that the Green Party is going to be provide leadership around the demand for accountability. The failure to account for the 60s assassinations has created a condition of elite impunity. I don't know exactly what happened, but I know that the crimes have been covered up. And the loss of all of those leaders, Kennedy, MLK, Malcolm, Robert, we could even throw in Fred Hampton, was essentially a theft of our democracy, because all of those individuals provided leadership that were they to have lived, that this arc of justice that MLK envisioned would have been actualized, but instead that arc of justice was in effect crumbled and broken by the actors that conducted this. So I think Greens should not be shy. We should be forthright and sincere. Okay, Natalie, go ahead.
So voting for this is really, it's not a big deal. The way that it's worded is maybe problematic, and Bob pointed out to some of the problematic parts of it, because the way it is written, it is assuming, it is assuming certain things, and so you're going to get pushback on that. Okay. What I would do is, just rewrite your proposal and maybe take away, some of the why is it important and consistent with the values of the mission, because the rest of it is already assuming a certain result. So that's why, I second Bob's concerns. It may be just a rewrite. Well, and I don't know who Spartacus International, so we would have to see who that is.
No, say that again, please, Natalie.
I second Bob's concerns that the way that the proposal is written presumes certain conclusions
Okay.
Uh,
The fundamental question
because
here
you're
would
calling
be,
here, so this is not only about, see, you're saying here, unsolved crimes that have been covered up. So there's, I mean, everybody knows that there's things that are not totally clear, right? But you're presuming the outcome. And the Pacific, you're calling here to dismantle the CIA. So that's, I mean, your proposal is asking to dismantle the CIA. So that's a whole other, I mean, I'm in favor of it. Again, it's not a deal, not a big deal, but it's not the sort of like proposal that you kind of mesh everything together.
okay,
And so the way that
I'll
I
just
see is that
make an
it's
observation that
is poorly written. Go ahead.
okay, the proposal would simply be, should the Pacific Green Party endorse, make a resolution to be a signatory to the Truth and Reconciliation Committee? That's the proposal.
Yeah.
All of this is just discussion.
Yeah, and
the proposal is very simple. Well, when we get to convention, everything will be reduced to single sentence. Very simple. And I hear what you're saying, Natalie.
Yeah, just rewrite the proposal and make it really take out all of that extraneous and additional stuff and just resubmit it. But yeah.
No, this will be cleaned up and simplified. I'm going to obviously make a very simple, so that when it's going to be yes or no, thumb, bump. So any other, let me see, there's some hands up. Let's just quickly kind of help me with these hands. Is this, Amy, is your hand back up? Jack, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I do.
Go for it, Jack.
Yes, I did have my hand up.
Okay.
I think Nathalie's
Jack
point,
and then Amy.
Thank you.
I think Nathalie's point is well taken, that the resolution actually contains more than one element. And they should be separated into separate resolutions. But I would maintain that even calling for truth and reconciliation are two different things. I think the truth and reconciliation action in South Africa was problematic and to some extent initially was a failure because of I shouldn't say initially, because of the reconciliation, that no one was ever brought to justice. And I personally would not vote for reconciliation at all. I think the people who commit these crimes need to go to jail, and some of them are still around. And I would call for truth, period, because the American public, especially the younger generation of American public, needs to know the full evil that this country has visited upon the world for a very long time in order to change it. It's not going to change otherwise until we find our own government abhorrent.
Okay. Well, Jack, thank you for that. And I have a question about, you understand that this is asking for us to be a signatory to an existing American Truth and Reconciliation Committee. You understand that, right, Jack?
Yeah.
Okay. So no one's going to go tell that committee to change how they formatted their proposal. I mean, I hear what you're saying, Jack, but I would ask you to be at least a stand aside and accept that this Truth and Reconciliation Committee has put together a good proposal and that it's fundamentally reasonable.
No, I'm not gonna vote against it. I'm just
okay. Thank you, Jack. We got some other hands up. Who's Amy Sachs is next, and then Dan.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I would share some of Bob's concerns, but I would also say, since you're determined about this, you definitely should continue to emphasize the connection between these past crimes and the current ones, because a lot of people we could potentially reach just don't know. They don't think about stuff that happened around the time I personally was born. So right. Just a suggestion, that's what I would emphasize. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. Actually, that is part of what I try to communicate. That's part of the point I'm making, that what's happening today is connected with the past. And so thank you very much for that, Amy. I appreciate that. Who's Dan, please? You have your hand up, and take your hand down. You click it off on your lower bar when you're done. Thank you, Dan. Oh, you're muted, Dan.
Okay. Two things. First, the one thing I see in this text that may be seen as presuming the result is the text that says the assassination of JFK was the triumph of the military-industrial complex against the American people, which apparently presumes that the military-industrial complex did it. Although I kind of doubt that that's going to run into much opposition at convention. And since it's not part of the resolution itself, people can agree or disagree, but the main point is the resolution. Second, this group involves Robert RFK Jr. I would very much like to try to draft RFK Jr. to run for president as a Green. 2024.
Oh my God!
He would probably refuse, but whether you like him or not, it's same thing as Jesse Ventura. A lot of people didn't like or dislike Jesse Ventura, but it would have been a great boost to our party.
Could we save this for some other time? Because we
Amy,
already have a lot on our plate.
I'm not going to give a speech
guys,
about it. I just wanted to bring that up. And I certainly I support signing this thing if he's involved.
Dan, thank you for your suggestion and your positive perspective on Robert Kennedy. We heard some guffaws from the crowd, and we're not going to. That's a noble notion, but it's not on our plate today. Anybody else? So let me just make the observation that Dan just observed, that yes, my language is filled with presumption. And when we go to convention, this will be the question will be very limited to this committee, Truth and Reconciliation Committee. And the Truth and Reconciliation Committee doesn't say what I'm saying. I'm convinced that this is a deep state operation, but I'm not insisting that. I accept that I may never know. But what I do know, as Amy observed, is that what's the failure to account for the 60s is haunting us today. And it haunted us in 9/11 and so on. Okay, any other thoughts on point number 2 and how to approach this? And I think these are very good information, what people are saying. Jack, your hand is still up. You did get to share. I trust you've been heard. Any other thoughts, any other reason to really avoid number 2, or any other thoughts? Okay.
Chuck, this is Bob.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Yeah, Chuck, I was just going to say, to add on to what Dan said about what's objectionable in 2, you've got the assassination of JFK and other 60s assassinations or unsolved crimes. They're not unsolved according to the government. In other words, there was the Warren Commission. There was that, botched thing where they got the wrong guys for the assassination of Martin Luther King and
Malcolm X.
Well, basically, you're making assumptions here. In other words, you're saying that's an unsolved crime. Well, not according to the investigation. So I wouldn't say that either. I would say, I think if we go with 1, we're saying we want to be truth seekers. We want to find out what's going on. If we go with 2, where you're saying these are unsolved crimes and whatnot, we're conspiracy theorists. So, if we ask for an investigation, we're truth seekers. If we make the conclusions beforehand, we're conspiracy theorists. So I think we can do this in a way that doesn't reflect badly on us. It accomplishes what you want.
Yeah.
Okay. Amy, is that okay? So let me just, when we go to convention with this, all of my editorial extra will not be present. It will be, shall PGP endorse this call for investigations or not? All of my editorial will be stripped away. I won't confuse. That's
Chuck,
essentially.
you have to put yourself on the stack. There's Bob, Dan, and Felipe are on the stack.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Let's go to Felipe, and then go to Felipe, please. Felipe, what are you thinking?
Well, thank you. First of all, I came late, so I didn't hear the first part, and I apologize for that. And second, I know that I cannot vote on this, but my take is this. If we want to investigate all the crazy stuff that our government had done in let's say the last 50 years, we need 1 million or more people to make committees. We won't have enough people to make that many committees. There's so many things out there that need to be investigated. Second, we are asking the system that produced this atrocious action to investigate itself. We are asking the system that produced this terrible thing to investigate themselves. I don't think it's a good approach. I suggest that what we need to do is find a way to get to power, and then when we get into power, then we investigate all those things that happen, and people don't want, and the system don't want the public to know. So I think if I go into a party where the priority in the 2021-24 is investigating the death of JFK, which, by the way, was some of because he invaded my country, Dominican Republic, and I have my saying on that. I think if we use in this time, our resources, and our human resources to just be part of this investigation, which will go nowhere because they won't investigate themselves, or like Bob said, this is already done based on what the government say, is almost wasting our time. So when that thing get to the committee, my vote will be definitely no. Thank you.
Dan, you're on the stack. Dan, you're on the stack, or we're on the stack.
You're muted, Dan.
I just wanted to clarify one thing. The only thing that I see in that text that actually presumes anything is the part that says it was a triumph of the military-industrial complex. The part calling it unsolved crimes merely states that we don't believe the government's story. It's not strictly speaking advancing any theory of our own. And I like it as is, saying that I don't believe what the government said. I don't know what did happen, but I do agree that they're unsolved crimes. To Felipe, we're not making a huge deal about this. We're just going to send this and get the conversation started. I think that is a good way to position ourselves to eventually increase our political influence and take power by being the party that is calling for this as part of the process of getting our political power. That's all.
Thank you, Dan. Who else is on stack here? Jack, your hand is still up. Natalie's hand is up.
No, I just put it up.
Okay.
I
Jack,
put it down 15 minutes ago.
Okay.
Okay,
so Jack and then Natalie.
Okay, so I think I'm in agreement with some of the things that are said here. I think perhaps the language be changed to reinvestigate rather than investigate. They need to be reopened and reinvestigated. And as far as Felipe's point about asking criminals to investigate themselves, I think that point is well taken, and I think most of Congress still are criminals. So what we could call for is a federal grand jury to reinvestigate, and then it would go through the judiciary, which is less corrupt than elected officials.
I like that. Good thought. Natalie, your hand is up.
I think that there is general agreement. Felipe, this is really an issue that is so dear to Chuck. He brings it up very often. So if it makes him happy and we can vote and we don't have to revisit, that's fine with me. What I suggest, Chuck, is to close the conversation. You are going to rewrite it, send it to the group here for suggested edits so that it's something simple that can be passed without too much effort at the convention, and move on.
Fair enough. Let's go to point number 3. So I don't, Natalie, you thought we've voted on this Black National Caucus statement. I don't think we have. This is, so basically, here's what's happened. Maybe 12 months ago, the Black National Caucus, the Black Caucus is in the Green Party US, and they issued a statement saying no to the COVID mandates. Meanwhile, the steering committee of the Green Party US issued their own statement that says mandates are good. So there's an opportunity. This is a request to pass a resolution that the Pacific Green Party endorses Black National Caucus statement on the COVID mandates. We endorse, so we're endorsing opposition to COVID mandates based on consumer safety platform plank. And this statement is, it's pretty well written, and it's, reasonable. And it's right there. I'll put this into the chat so it's easy for anyone to see. But I think Pacific Green Party should, well, you guys all know that I'm against the federal COVID program. And this is an opportunity for us to be in solidarity with one of the caucuses that works within the Green Party at the national level. And again, so this is available to us. We can pass a resolution. Is there anybody who has thoughts on why we should not do this? Would anybody block this? So let's.
Yes.
Okay, so we have some hands up. Was that you, Amy? Nope, let's see. Amy has her hand up and Natalie has her hand up. So let's go to Amy Sachs first. Amy, what are your thoughts on endorsing the Black National Caucus?
I appreciate the concerns of the caucus, but I am more in line with the National Committee and with people like Dr. Margaret Flowers, who's been our candidate, who have said all along that they believe that vaccines are important, but by themselves, vaccines cannot hope to prevail against the pandemic. And from a personal standpoint, I also say that as somebody who was forced to keep working through COVID, got COVID, because I didn't have the privilege of isolating, basically. And I'm also thinking in terms of a lot of other people that have been, you'll hear from a lot of disabled advocates. I don't know what our disabled members have said personally, that this whole thing has been terrible for them because they've always been at increased risk because of the refusal of other people and businesses and government to support things like lockdowns and isolation. So while I appreciate your feelings and the feelings of the Black National Caucus, I don't support this. Thanks.
So Amy, just to be clear, you would be a full-blown block.
Yes, I would block.
Okay. And the reason you would block is because you think that the federal COVID response has been reasonable fundamentally, and saying no to the federal call for the mandate is not necessary or appropriate.
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to call it reasonable, because Biden is very much trying to have his cake and eat it too, which in a sense Trump was also doing. Okay. But the Biden administration believes that once everybody's vaccinated, we should just push everything back to normal. But I don't believe that things are normal, and I don't, whatever that used to be. So okay. I wouldn't go so far as to say I support what the government is doing.
Okay.
I just don't support this either.
Okay. Natalie, your hand is up.
I'm pretty sure that this was voted down at one of the last conventions, because I think of one of the last conventions, you sent several proposals last minute, and they were all voted down. And this was one of them. This Black National Caucus contains in their wording that is really a little bit out there, which is why it was not supported at the national level. And I'm going to share my screen so I can share some of the wording of the caucus. Okay, like among the most vile, unconstitutional, immoral, unscientific, discriminatory, and outright criminal policies. That wording is like a little bit far out, and I would definitely not endorse a document that's like that far out. And there were other things in the Black National Caucus. So I would definitely vote this proposal down, and I would document why I would vote it down. And I'm pretty sure I just have to go through the files of the previous of the previous conventions to document when it was voted on. Having said that, and the only reason I'm on this call is that I think that the Liberty Caucus and National Caucus positions are here, right? And let's say the conventional is here. There, or are the Green parties here. There is an overlap. There are issues that we all agree on. I think that we should, I don't know if we can do it today, but I think that we should just do a table. What do we agree on and where do we disagree? Because there are some things where we disagree. For example, I generally agree that there shouldn't be a mandate. It's not a good way to enforce policy. It's just not a good way to enforce policy for many reasons. As a doctor, there are exceptions. There's always exceptions, when we consider autoimmunity and things like that, whatever. There is a lot of exemptions. Having said that, in the setting of a pandemic like in 2020, 2021, it did make sense to have people vaccinate. It did decrease a lot the death, the mortality, and the hospitalizations. I know that that's something that we disagree on. The numbers did change very rapidly after the introduction of the vaccines. So, we can agree, yes, in general, we oppose mandates and come up with some wording that we don't agree that on certain things, blah, blah, blah. But the statement as written by the Black National Caucus is a little bit on the bias side, but it's also very inflammatory. And I would definitely not vote it. Okay. And it was voted down already.
Okay, Dan has his hand up and then Jack.
Yeah, what I'm hearing, well, first, just to clarify a particular point about what happened at National, Chuck, what happened at National was the National Committee made its statement first, at least as I recall. It made its statement supporting vaccine mandates, meaning that it was stepping up and saying that it was deciding for the entire party nationally this position on such an important issue that had not gone through any process of any grassroots process of discussion or actually coming up with a position. So the anger that you see, folks, in that Black National Caucus statement is in reaction to National Committee being completely out of line and starting in taking that position and trying to force their position. And that, when I heard Natalie say, well, the Liberty Caucus is here and then the party is here, there's no party position on mandates in the PGP either. There never has been. Okay, so I hear over and over again that people think that the party is pro-mandate. No, it's not. It has no position.
No formal position.
We have not had the kind of discussion that can lead us to a position. And that's the long and short of it. And I think any of us who fail to admit that are just lying to ourselves. That's all.
Jack, let's go to Jack, and then Natalie still has her hand up.
Yeah, well, to me, the word mandate is poison. First of all, it violates the Nuremberg principle. You cannot mandate any medical procedure. I think the Third Reich certainly demonstrated that principle. And it's incorporated in the Nuremberg principle, which has been adopted everywhere in the world. It also involves the separation of powers. And this is what the Fifth Circuit Court in New Orleans determined, which was upheld by the Supreme Court, that we do have separation of powers in this country. And the medical regulatory authorities do not have the ultimate authority. The Congress passes laws, legislators pass laws, the executive branch and its various agencies do not. So this is a very fundamental principle. I would also say in this case that the CDC data was conclusive about the dangers of COVID-19. It showed that virtually all the deaths, even the ones they're valid, and the criteria were very sketchy, involved at least 4 additional comorbidities. And Anthony Fauci, the Lord of the Realm, he actually published an article in the New England Journal of Medicine on February 28th, 2020. He had gotten information from China. His co-conspirators, Xi Zhengli at Wuhan, that they had very, very modest death rates, case fatality rates. And based on this data, he thought we would basically have maybe a bad flu season. COVID-19 would be nothing more than a bad flu season. And that is exactly what happened.
Okay, Jack.
Yeah.
Make your final point. I mean, you're basically saying what exactly about the Black National Caucus statement? That it's fundamentally reasonable in your opinion and not so offensive?
I haven't read it in a while, but it looked fundamentally reasonable. I don't know if it went into all these particular issues, but I would certainly endorse it on the basis of what I've just said. And just one additional point, the COVID-19 so-called emergency has been used as cover for massive wealth transfers, massive transfer of public wealth from small business to the big corporations. The 664 billionaires in the United States increased their wealth 40% in 2020.
Okay, that's a whole nother criticism to make, Jack, and I'm on board with that. We would need to craft a special statement that addressed that. Natalie has her hand up, please.
Thank you, Jack. So, first of all, no, there is no position on the mandates, and we don't have a statement. I tried to come up, the one thing that I want you guys to understand as a naturopathic doctor and my experience and the way that I practice medicine, especially because my specialty is immune function, I don't agree with the boosters and boosting and relying only on vaccines and vaccines as the main preventative or the main way to address COVID or future infections. Neither do I support the use of a lot of the conventional medications because they don't really work, right? And they're also expensive, blah, blah. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So I want you to understand that I am kind of aligned with the position of the Liberty Caucus. The problem that there are some areas where we don't align anymore. And I think that if we focus on the areas where we align, we could come up with a statement that we could both all agree on. And in there we can say, there are areas of the statement or consequences or implications that we no longer agree. That's fine. I tried to come up to open that discussion way back in 2020, in August in 2020. And the first portion, because at the time, a segment of the population was denying that COVID was a problem. They were saying that the death rates are the same as the flu and it's not a problem. And the first statement of the COVID, the statement that I was trying to come up with a consensus was mentioning, yes, the mortality rates are percentage per infection low, but because it's a naive population and it's going to affect a very wide number, there's going to be a large mortality in numbers, right? And I could not get that past that paragraph because one person in particular from the Liberty Caucus kept on deleting, saying, no, COVID is not a pandemic. COVID doesn't exist. So that and then the whole issue of using or not hydroxychloroquine, which is basically supporting big pharma, we couldn't get past that discussion, right? Like it was like, if I don't agree with your position 100%, I was against you. And so we never really were able to come up with a certain discussion or a certain statement or what do we agree on? Because my purpose was, what do we agree on? I totally agree. This is a boondoggle. I mean, this is the biggest moneymaker for the pharmacological industry, for the pharma industry. And the problem we have in the current healthcare sector, the current healthcare does not work. And it's the pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies totally dominate the market. So I totally agree with you. The way that we approach the pandemic and future pandemics is not going to, it's not going to work. It's not going to functional. And, you know, I wish we could sit down and really listen to each other and come up with what we agree on. Going back to the statement by the Black National Caucus includes language. For example, and I'm going to share again.
Natalie, while you're sharing.
Look, the corona pandemic is one of the most dangerous wars in American history. That language is, it's a stretch.
It's incendiary.
Yes, and it is. It's not good language, and because the most lethal, anyways, it is a stretch. It is poorly worded. I would not endorse this, and I would totally vote no. And I think that you're going to have a very hard time.
Okay.
At the convention to get this voted on. It was already voted on once. It was voted on at the national by quite a large margin. It's just not going to pass. You're just going to end up in a lot of like circular discussions that we've already had.
Okay. I hear you, Natalie. Are there other, I see hands have been taken down. Amy, is your hand up? And Dan's hand is up.
Yeah.
Amy, go for it, and then Dan.
No, I was just going to mention that I'm pretty much in agreement with Natalie here. But also, if we were going to put this before the convention for review, I'm not really saying it's a good idea, but if we were, you would definitely want to give people the option to read the national statement too.
Okay.
Just in the interest of fairness.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's all I have to say.
I wanted to mention also that I did not support the National SCO Steering Committee statement, and I contacted the steering committee before they released it and told them, don't release it. It's a poison. So
okay.
See, I actually did support most of it, but you would at very least want people to see. You would want people to see both, is all I'm saying. Thanks.
Okay, fair enough, Dan. And then let me just make an observation. The next resolution question proposal is going to circle back to this question of, you know, is there room? Do we have grounds for consensus? And I think it would be beautiful if we could kind of attempt again to find common ground through the consensus process of talking together. So let's just, Dan, what are your thoughts? Or have you taken your hand down?
No, well, yeah, I got to say this. Sorry, Natalie, you're trying to revise your record of what you did in 2020. You mentioned August 2020. That was when you took over the Facebook page of Lane Chapter to censor us because you thought that we were publishing dangerous information about COVID. To this date, you still haven't even admitted that it didn't belong to you, that the SEC didn't create it. You have done all this. You've attacked our chapter for 2 years, attacked my reputation, and smeared me all on that basis. Okay, and I want everyone on this call to know that what Natalie just said about, oh, well, I'm looking for consensus, trying to start a conversation and trying to blah, blah. No, she was censoring chapter members, taking away chapter resources, and she's been on this campaign against us since then. It's been more than two years now. When is that going to end?
Okay, thank you, Dan.
That elephant is in this room, and Natalie, you brought it up. There's Lane chapter members in here who know this, who remember this very well. Okay, so
thank you, Dan.
We are aggrieved, and we want our grievances addressed.
Okay.
Natalie, I want an apology.
Okay, Dan, hold that thought. Natalie, don't reply. Jack, do you have a thought?
Yeah, getting back to the Black National Caucus, what we could do is to endorse it in principle and rewrite it to our own satisfaction, to take out objectionable language. But I think in principle, we do endorse the rejection of mandates, and on the grounds I've already discussed.
Okay.
So we could do a modification of it.
I at this point, I'm not that attached to it. It's not that beautifully written. I have no problem characterizing COVID mandate and the federal COVID response as vile. Frankly, from what I'm reading, Natalie, the Department of Defense was the primary agency driving the whole COVID warp speed creation of the vaccine. So let's not get lost in that right now. Let's just, I'm going to share my screen. And let's just kind of go back. Wait, shoot, how do I do that? Okay, where is my screen? Is this my screen? Shoot, is this share? Let me see. Can you guys see my, am I back at, can you guys see my?
Yes.
Okay, so let's forget about the Black National Caucus. We can, let me just, I hear what people are saying. There's a lot of, people don't like the language. I'm not that attached to it. Number 4 was if Green Party in Oregon, PGP, endorsed Black National Caucus, then I would ask that we make a resolution to ask the Green Party National Committee to endorse the Black National Caucus. But let's hang that up. So here's where, and we're coming at 11:20. We're an hour and a half into this. This is kind of getting to the heart of some of our stuff here. At Green Liberty Caucus, I have posted a letter to the governor, and I have posted a call for medical freedom from Big Pharma. So these are requests. So basically, let me just say this. Okay, so this is coming out of Green Liberty Caucus. We are opposed to the COVID vaccine. We're convinced that the federal COVID response has been opaque, has been dishonest, and has not been a sincere medical emergency. It's been a national security matter that's been wrapped up in public health. So maybe this is something we could never get agreement on, but I'm hoping that within the Green Party, there's been some shifting, that people are coming to an understanding that the vaccines really aren't safe and they're not effective. And I've come out with very strong language that basically says giving the COVID experimental vaccine to children is well, it arises to the level of abuse, in my opinion, because
it's criminal.
Furthermore, so here, Natalie, I know this is a tough point. So the resolution request would be for the Pacific Green Party to stand with Green Liberty in opposing basically calling for an end to COVID vaccines in Oregon. That's essentially, and then the other piece of this is, let me see, how do I go back? If I click back, let me see. The other one is a full-blown medical freedom from Big Pharma. And this has a medical, maybe in here, if we're gonna talk about this, maybe there's, and again, I mean, if we need to take more time, I would like to see a conversation about, you know, I mean, I'm coming to a point where I'm against Medicare for all, because Medicare for all, and this is an interesting point, we're coming into Oregon. Oregon passed a single payer. So there's these discussions coming up. The quality of my understanding of single payer is that it's an insurance program, and that the insurance program directs people to medical services. But medical services, really, in my view, and I would love to see the Green Party advance this, and it's totally consistent with our values, where we essentially put that, you know, a call for integrative holistic health that starts with each person being evaluated for their metabolic well-being. And that was what was missed in the COVID response, was there was no early treatments. There was a singular focus toward vaccine. The vaccine is experimental, and now we're learning that, in fact, it may be a full-blown fraudulent act. I don't quite know. I mean, so I'm going to stop talking. There's 2 requests here. This is point number 4, asking for a resolution for endorsing the letter to the governor, or we sit down together and try to find a single statement where we basically condemn the COVID vaccines. I don't know. So Chuck out. Are there any hands up? Anybody want to remark on how we should approach this? I mean, Natalie, do you have your hand up? Why don't you share? What are your thoughts? Oh, and there's a Whitney Webb citation from Marv. Yes, oh, you're reading it. Bless your heart, Marv. Marv, you're muted.
This woman is excellent. She's as thorough as researcher as I've ever. She reminds me of David Ray Griffith. Very, very good book about the history of what we're going through.
Okay, I see Jack has his hand up, and then Natalie, you want to let's hold Natalie back, unless you really want to share, and let's hear from Jack, and then Natalie, you can come in. Help.
Well, first of all, I strongly endorse Marv's recommendation of Whitney Webb. I mean, she's done it's an encyclopedic work, and it's in 2 volumes. And she's published by a local publisher right here in Eugene, Trine Day Press. Anyway, I was going to say this could basically be even a subsection of the earlier resolution, because I think the Nuremberg principle needs to be applied to the vaccinations. It cannot be mandated, and moreover, it requires informed consent, and no informed consent has been provided to any vaccinee. And the informed consent now would include this massive data about myocarditis, about pericarditis, about compromised status of the immune system, vulnerability to other things, recrudescence of latent cancers. I mean, the informed consent now consists of blank pages. I mean, this is just criminal. There have been slightly over 1,000 deaths of athletes following vaccination this year. This information needs to be included in all informed consent, enclosures with the vaccine. So if people want to be crazy enough to still take the vaccines, I guess they have that right. But it should have.
Okay, could we please stop with the ableism and the personal attacks on those of us who prefer to vaccinate? That's not necessary. Please just leave that out of this. All right.
No, I'm not going to leave it out. It's a fact.
It's your perception of the fact. That's an unnecessary attack on other people in this room. So please don't do that.
It's not an attack on anybody, for Christ's sake. People in this room probably didn't know any of this when you got vaccinated.
It's not about you, Amy. You're taking this personally. It's not about you.
Anyway, the Nuremberg principle, that's my point.
Okay, thank you, Jack.
Natalie. I agree with Amy.
All right, I know people. Okay, Natalie, what are your thoughts, please?
If you don't want to vaccinate in the middle of a pandemic, then that's your prerogative, right? It's your body, you don't vaccinate, fine. But then you're also foregoing being able to go to public places when there's a matter of public safety. So the only problem that I have with people who have been very vocal against vaccines, which is fine, it's your prerogative, it's your prerogative. It's the lack of personal responsibility as to the impact of your actions on others. And that was most evident for me at the height of the pandemic again, when people who were coming from the same kind of position, and you know, the issues were changed over time, came out against wearing masks in public places and wanted to, and we had people come into the clinic not wanting to wear masks, coughing. That is a lack of personal responsibility. So that's why there was a mandate, because people were because there was this whole media, it was a media zoo on both sides, right? For or against. So I'm not going to take that position. And the mandate, it's up to you to get vaccinated or not. Nobody's going to take you to the chair and and vaccinate you. You go or you don't go, right? But the lack of personal responsibility towards others is the problematic part. And also the lack of putting all of these issues into the context of a healthcare that is really problematic in the United States. And going back to, we really should have a conversation where I listen to you as much as you listen to me, and I say you as in the plural, that we listen to each other both ways, not just one way, right? To come up with these issues, because right now it's like, if I don't agree with you 100%, I'm against you. And that's not leading us to any consensus. So based on all of the media and based on all of the exchanges that we've already had on this issue and the way that the Liberty Caucus is approaching the issue, I haven't read the statement and the letters in detail, but I doubt that there will be agreement on it or consensus on it. And so very likely it's going to be voted down. And at this point, I would be very opposed to it.
Jack, is your hand still up? Or did you put it back up? Would you take it down? Did you have a thought, Jack? Okay, so Jack just took his hand down. Okay. So let me, this is a divide. I mean, it's amazing to me how divided we are and how over this COVID thing. And what it comes down to in many cases, it is whether one trusts that the federal government is being noble, or whether you're skeptical about the federal government. And initially at the start of COVID, I accepted it was a natural event. Subsequent to the start, and as I've read and learned and listened and talked, I'm now convinced that the federal COVID response really is another one of these crimes against our democracy. So,
and that's where we differ.
And that's where we differ. And we're not, and obviously this is a very contentious, very divisive.
But we agree on a few things. We agree on the fact that the healthcare system sucks, the fact that insurance and pharmaceutical companies are there to make money and not to protect our healthcare, that there needs to be a focus on, personal responsibility, that there needs to be also that there are basic treatments or approaches that do work, that are low cost and low risk, that we could probably all agree on. So there are things that we can agree on. Those we should highlight. We're not going there, but that's not being talked about, but that we agree on.
Well, I have just a quick question to you as a naturopath. Do you agree that it's unreasonable? I mean, to be frank, I overheard a local. It was a grocery market, New Seasons, and a prospective employee was being interviewed. This is just 3 or 4 months ago, and the employer said, "Have you been vaccinated? You can't work here unless you've taken the vaccine." I mean, and that's what motivated me to write one of these essays about opposing the COVID, because this individual's civil liberty right to work without discrimination was violated by that employer.
No.
And it's being held up by the Oregon Health Authority. They're posting notices that say you must take the vaccine. But what's emerged from this, Natalie, is that these things are not safe and effective. They've never gone through an authentic approval process, and athletes are getting heart injuries. I mean, is that really do we really debate that?
Yes, Many things about what you said.
Okay, so what's debatable about what I said? I mean,
Amy's on the
specifically,
stack and then Dan is on the stack.
okay. I mean, do you really think they're safe? Do you stand by the notion that the vaccines are safe and effective? Natalie, can you in good conscience kind of stand on that? I guess is what I'm.
Amy, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, first of all, just to split hairs, New Seasons is no longer locally owned. It's owned by a company in Korea. But also, I would just like to gently take issue with the idea that just because I got vaccinated and supported the lockdown, that I think the government is noble. I don't think the government is doing any of this because it's noble. It's doing what it does because it wants us to work and make money for corporations. So we do have that much in common. So let's please not do the thing where you equate a desire to be vaccinated and obtain a vaccination in your own state with some kind of blind approval of the United States government and everything that it does. Thanks.
That's fair. I see Dan has his hand up, and then let's go Dan and then Natalie.
Yeah, what does it matter talking about things that we agree on when we still apparently do not yet all agree that a chapter's resources and property belong to that chapter and are not to be taken over by people who think they have authority to intervene.
Okay. We're going to thank you, Dan. Natalie, what's your latest thought?
I don't remember. You asked me a couple of things about the, about the vaccine. What do I think and all of that?
Yep.
I don't want to mention anything because it's recorded here. And
okay.
This is my line of work. So I'm not going to reply to that unless you stop recording.
Should we stop recording and start recording? Or, I mean, it's not important, Natalie. you don't need to defend.
No, I don't need to defend. I can just say my mind, but this is my line of work. It's a very delicate issue, and I don't want my word or what I say to be misquoted and misrepresented because I've had my photo taken from some of these Zooms and then posted on Facebook with comments on it, right? And so I don't want my personal and professional life to be affected by a frank conversation and by being very open. So if you stop recording, I can share my perspective, my personal perspective. But as long as it's recorded, I can't talk about it.
How do I stop recording? And then start.
What I was saying is, the civil rights of the person who wanted to work at New Seasons were not violated. What about the rights?
Natalie, sorry, I'm interrupting. This is being recorded now, just in case.
Yeah, I just put it back because it was not medical anymore. Thank you. Yeah, so the rights of what about the rights of the workers who prefer a place where more people are vaccinated, right? So that's, it's taking a very one-sided perspective on the whole thing, which is why I think that we need to have a frank discussion and be willing to listen to each other, because right now I'm being attacked on this one issue. Like regarding, I have a question. Who does info@pacificgreens.org belong to?
Is this, are you reading from the chat right now?
No, I'm asking Dan, who does info@pacificgreens.org belong to?
Natalie.
Yes or no?
Screw that
that's
ridiculous deflection. I used that email to take our property back that you stole from us. Period.
Excuse me. The account.
Go to hell. Dan.
Yeah, I know we don't agree, Dan. And the thing is that you did something. You did not wait for 48 hours.
Just stop smearing me. Stop smearing me. You, of all people, have no basis at all, no standing to be talking about anyone else's ethics.
Well, at least
you're and stop attacking me.
I have not attacked you.
Yes, you are. You're attacking me. You're trying to lead into your bullshit about my ethics. Okay. If you want to start a fight, you're trying to start a fight on this call. You're trying to get me riled up.
Gaslighting.
Trying to make me.
You're the one who started bringing it up.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here, Natalie. Hold that thought. You're asking a question about the info at Pacific Greens, who owns it, who gets to use it. hold that thought because you're jumping ahead to another.
Leaving the meeting because I'm not going to go into a personal attack, and that sort of personal attack, I'm not going to be subjected to that.
Okay.
You brought it up.
Can I say something? I'm going to retire. I cannot believe that this attitude is accepted like a normal in this group. So thank you for the opportunity. Bye.
Okay. So Felipe just left because he didn't like the tone. Is that what I missed what happened with Felipe? Okay. Let's just take a note here. The resolution to endorse Green Liberty call for medical freedom. I don't know where that's going to go at convention.
I will not support that at all.
So
as I said in Groups IO, you would be impinging on the freedom of those of us who want the vaccine to receive the vaccine in our own state without having to cross a border. So no, right. I will never support this.
Right. Because, and the only reason I'm advancing this is because the information I'm reading about the COVID vaccine, and this is information that you don't get in mainstream media, it's the information represents that the vaccine causes, in some cases, and we don't know why, it shows up in some places and doesn't show up in others. It's a mystery. But safety signals are being triggered by the deployment of these vaccines. And on the grounds of all these safety signals, I'm inclined to say the COVID should be stopped pending the appropriate process to determine safety. Now, and so on. So that's where I'm at with this. To me, this isn't about someone else's freedom. This is about the federal government letting something enter the public that should not have been permitted to enter the public. So let's pass on those five and these discussions about the COVID. And this is the contentious issue of number 7. And what I'm suggesting and asking for, because we're divided over the Lane Greens and the event that Natalie just raised about who gets to use the info at Pacific Greens, this is a resolution that doesn't name. It just rises above and it acknowledges that the Lane Greens were reporting on the federal COVID response in a way using a dissident perspective, and that they were entitled to do that, and that it wasn't appropriate for the SEC to try to take that back and create the event. So I think there's a desire to kind of go beyond the divide and the anger over the SEC decision to take that Facebook site. So this is from convention, an apology that the steering committee made a mistake. They did infringe on the free speech rights, and that the Lane Greens remain in good standing. And that's what this asks for. I mean, this is rather than hashing over, this is simply an assertion from convention that we're going to bury the hatchet. It's kind of what this is getting at. So I see that Dan has a hand up. Why don't we let Dan go first, since this actually impacts, this is all about the Lane Greens. Dan, what are your thoughts on this? Dan, you might remain muted. I can't.
Since Bob and Amy are on this call, let me try to explain why this business Natalie keeps coming up with about using info at pacificgreens.org is so ridiculous. I was on the SEC at the time. Those of us who have been to the SEC or have gone to SEC meetings know that those email addresses are not really particularly big deal. But in any case, I was on the SEC. It is simply a deflection to try to paper over the fact that other members of the SCC acting outside of formal meeting, simply meeting in private, decided that they could exceed, that SCC has no authority to take over a chapter's page. There is nothing wrong with me as an SCC member using an email address that I'm already authorized to use to reverse that decision. I was setting things right. Natalie is trying to make everyone ignore what she did and make me look bad just by using an email address that I was already using. And considering, and I'm not going to go into details about what has happened since then, but I am not going to be lecturing on ethics about that from someone like her, period. Now, I don't want this to go anywhere ugly. I don't want to have to get mad. I don't want to have to be, I don't want it to become a big argument. But she does owe not just me, because I was defending my chapter, and in particular, Sabrina Siegel, who was the one being censored. And, but every other member of our chapter who have the right to maintain control of our own property. Sabrina created that page. And Natalie has still been telling Facebook for the past 2.5 years that the SCC created it. She has absolutely no evidence. She apparently convinced Bob that it was an unknown situation, but still both Bob and Amy, both of you went along with her sending that letter claiming, even though she had absolutely no proof. We know who created our page, and we don't have to prove that to anybody, and that if there's no contrary evidence, then that's how it should be. But anyhow, it's not me that Natalie owes the apology to, it's all of us, to our chapter. And we do need to do this before we have any attempt at a real discussion about COVID issues, because this happened. This was really serious. A lot of us got hurt. My reputation is being smeared very badly. And this is the elephant in the room. We can't go on just ignoring it. Okay, so I'm asking both of you to actually listen to us, listen to what we have to say, and hear our side of this story, instead of having Natalie just preach to you all her things about using an email, info@pacificgreens.org, because I'm telling you, pretty much basically what she is saying is based on a lie. And we can demonstrate that if you have the time and patience to actually talk to us about it. I don't want to alienate you. I don't want to alienate anybody. Natalie has a way of pissing me off in groups and making me raise my voice. And I try to avoid that. And I want to do this rationally and get you all on my side, because I don't want this to become a big ongoing conflict. Okay. I want this to be resolved, but to be resolved, we do deserve justice. And that's all.
Thank you, Dan. There's two hands up, and I believe one of them is Bob and the other is Amy. Let's just go to Bob.
Yeah, Dan, I wasn't around for any of this stuff. And, I mean, I really can't speak to evidentiary. I know that you're upset on one side. I know that Connor says he suffered economic damages on the other. I mean, it's like he said, she said at this point. I mean, and I've worked with Natalie, and I trust her judgment. I don't know you all that well, although it appears you ran a good campaign. It looks like you know what you're doing down there. But I don't know how we're going to resolve this at this point. I mean, you want an apology. I mean, that's like Ukraine asking for Crimea back. I mean, it seems to me unlikely that that's going to happen, since it's an event that only, you know about what happened. The people that were around them know what happened. The rest of us don't. So I don't see an answer coming from this. But what I do see is that a lot of people that would be working together and cooperating, to try and advance the things we agree on, we're arguing and wasting all this energy. And it would be nice if we could get together and find some resolution. We could all work together, because it's just we're just wasting all kinds of energy that could be going towards advancing the party. And that's all I've got to say on it.
Amy, can you go, please?
I don't think I even need to add anything to what Bob said. That pretty much sums up my feelings. I didn't understand your assertion where you said I signed off on Natalie's letter or whatever in 2020. I couldn't really have done that because I wasn't involved in any of this. And to this day, I am not on Facebook. I've never liked Facebook. I've never used it. So I'm sorry. I don't know where that came from. I'm sorry.
Talking about the SCC meetings, Natalie did not let this drop. And again, this is on the one hand, you're saying you don't know what happened, but on the other hand, this did happen and it keeps coming up.
I just would like us to move forward. And I know that you and Natalie have these issues, but no, Dan, you're an adult. You have adult opinions, ideas, and values. So if she's responsible, then you're also responsible. And I'm just going to leave that there because I think other than that, I'm in accordance with Bob and I don't need to add any more.
That's just an I don't know, I'm going to take an everybody's wrong position, frankly. And what's been going on is Natalie has not let this drop. She has been sending letters to Facebook for the past 2.5 years, trying to take over our page again. Okay. And yeah, that's something you don't know anything about, but it's been going on. She keeps doing that. And she keeps
what I do know is every single time we have a discussion about anything, we end up back on this. And I'm not a magician. I don't know what magic wand to wave to fix that, but I wish you all could fix that.
We were talking about COVID, okay, and we were talking about how things were going in 2020, and that is how things were going in 2020. Now, the deal with the Facebook page, apparently, not knowing anything about it, when you were on the SCC, you voted to have Natalie go ahead and send this letter to Facebook, which is basically this SCC overstepping its authority, trying to take over a chapter's Facebook page. She claims that the SCC created it. It's false. Okay, that's just the plain facts. It is our page, and the SCC can't have it. Now, if she would just admit that, then we could actually move on. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't apologize. I think we deserve an apology for what happened. But if we can all agree that a chapter's resources that the chapter members created themselves, by the way, is the property of a chapter, and that's how it should be. It's not the business of any central authority, the SCC or anyone else, to interfere with that. Another thing is that I'm not prolonging this business about using info at pacificgreens.org being some kind of ethical lapse. It was not. And again, if that's not something you know anything about, then why accept the every time Natalie brings up, oh, well, you used info at pacificgreens.org without our permission, when you don't know the facts. So yeah, obviously, no. I'm telling you that I was on the SCC at the time. There was nothing wrong with me using info at pacificgreens.org to reverse the misdeeds of other SCC members, which are not done officially as an SCC action anyhow. But anyhow, yes, I agree with you that this drama is completely unnecessary. But it keeps secretly going on. When we try to move on from it, it keeps coming back to us again and again. That's the problem.
Okay, let me jump in. I got my hand up here, and I'm going to take my hand down. So let me just, this issue of apology from convention, to me, is a way. So Amy and Bob, the party is stuck. And it's not so much that the party is stuck, is that Natalie and Connor and the people who made the decision to remove the admins from the Lane Greens Facebook site remains a sore spot. And Natalie's position is that Dan broke the rules by availing himself of the info at Pacific Greens to communicate with Facebook that what happened was not appropriate. And so technically Dan used info at Pacific Greens while in his capacity as an officer. Dan was not removed from the SEC. He was not disaffiliated. He wasn't a bad guy at the time. So he was within his rights, is my position. Natalie insists that he was totally off the mark totally wrong, blah, blah, blah. So very, very strongly divided perspective on this. What I'm proposing in this apology is that the convention, we, the people of the Green Party at convention, are going to kind of bury the hatchet. Natalie can think what she wants to think. You know, Lane Greens can think what they want to think, but we, the people of the convention, recognize that this thing needs to be bedded down, and it's basically kind of giving a pass to everyone, because in the past it's simply to say that that Lane Greens were not unreasonable to communicate their opposition to the federal COVID response, and it was not appropriate to try to limit their free speech right on the Facebook site to do that. So that's what this proposal is asking for. You know,
it doesn't matter whether you agree with what we were posting or not. It's about our right to post it.
Right.
And this was all in the context of there was massive censorship going on in 2020.
Right. And the Lane Greens were pushing against that censorship, and then Connor got communicated to by some other outside progressive group that complained and said, look what these guys are conspiracy theorists. And it was a slur made on the Lane Greens. And then a group of SEC members got together to take action. And Charles Newland at the time was on the SEC, and he quit the SEC over this event as a measure of how divided the SEC was. George Hutchinson was on the SEC at the time, and for some reason, he just hates Dan's guts. So he had no problem. Dan said something to him one time. So there's really bad. So George has left the party. He's gone to the People's Party. So he's not even around. So I don't even know who's left over. I think Mary Guidry's gone. A lot of people that were involved in this decision are no longer involved in the party, hardly. So that's what this is about. Any other final thoughts, and let's end our meeting. I think this has been helpful to me to get feedback from others. So does anyone have any final thoughts on this and how we can, what we want to say and think?
Well, I have been in a lot of groups. I tell you what, the Pacific Green Party is top heavy with overly sensitive. I mean, Dan wants an apology from 2 years ago. Amy can't stand somebody, she takes it personally that somebody talks about the vaccines. We got people leaving from comments made to one another. I mean, what is it about the Pacific Green Party that attracts so many overly sensitive people? I mean, it's crazy. There's something deeper going on here, and that's why I'm here. I love to watch this stuff. So anyway, that's all I got. Thank you. Good work, Chuck. Way to go, brother.
Okay. Thanks, Marv. Amy does have her hand up, and then let's go to Dan.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before in other settings, and this is not me speaking as a member of the SEC anyway, but you all need a mediator. A convention is not a place to try to sort this out, not after 2 years. I think I mentioned this to Natalie before too, and her comment was, well, professional mediators are extremely expensive and we don't have a lot of money. But my thought is we're going to have to figure out a way to do that, because I just don't think this is ever going to be settled otherwise.
Okay, fair enough.
It's not working. And unlike Marvin, I don't find this kind of thing enjoyable to witness. It doesn't really have anything to do with what I signed on to this organization to try and do. So thank you.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Amy. Dan, we're going to give Dan the final word here.
Yeah, so Marv, it's not just from 2 years ago. I keep trying to say it keeps going on and on and on. Like Natalie keeps trying to deal us out this punishment. And of course, I was evicted by Natalie for not by any SEC vote originally, but evicted from the PacificGreens.org and from all state party apparatus. And I've been vilified, and she's been trying to stigmatize me as unethical over this ridiculous email business, info@pacificgreens.org, trying to spin that into a constant smear. So I don't think I'm being overly sensitive. This has damaged my reputation. I barely managed to get nominated for U.S. Senate. And by the way, I did turn out to be the best performing Green candidate for U.S. Senate, for governor or U.S. Senate in the country. But I had to fight. You know, I have this like ball and chain that tries to block my every move. And Natalie is kind of is on this long-term vendetta against me to try to hold me back from doing anything. So, you know, the solution, in my opinion, has always been to just decentralize and ignore it. But yes, I do believe that the party needs to recognize this. And this isn't going to come about by a mediator, because Natalie is in the position of power compared to us. We're outsiders, and negotiating from that position is only going to lead to some unjust compromise that favors the person in the position of power. For a healthy functioning party, people need to know what's going on, and you can either find out or not. And if you don't want to find out, you know, well, be realistic. Shit happens. People do things to each other, and you know, I don't want this to harm the party's function, but it hasn't. It's not going to just go away by magical things that don't involve the entire party actually acknowledging the problems.
You know, Natalie self-appointed herself chair at the Lake Oswego meeting in 2016. And here we are at 2023, and she is still the chair of the Pacific Green Party.
Right. Long story short, we don't need the SCC to have this power. We don't need central power figures that can do these kind of things. We need a decentralized organization where everybody is free to act as they want. And that's I don't know where Chuck's proposal is going to go. I'm absolutely sure Natalie's just going to start talking about info at Pacific Greens again and try to make it all about that. But we could also just move towards, if you really want the party to function well, let's get rid of the opportunities for people to gatekeep and take control, and make it a top-down thing where they can actually do things that actually cause procedural or operational harm to other members, basically freeze other people out of the system. We don't need this big state party apparatus where someone can take control and then push other people out. This happens in a lot of organizations, and it's not healthy. So you may or may not trust me, but just to be clear, that's where I'm going, is trying to improve the general functionality and health of the party by pushing for decentralization. And that's all.
Thank you, Dan. Bob, you have your hand up, and I want to make a remark about the mediation prospect and how to approach this.
The only thing I wanted to say was, Marvin, I object to your characterization of people as being overly sensitive. I've generally found that people that accuse others of that are being insensitive themselves. So that's all I wanted to say. Dan, I really hope that we can find some resolution on this, because, you know, it's hurting everybody. So I don't.
You're a perfect example of what I just said. You took it personally. You thought it was about you, brother.
Well, no, actually, I thought it was about Amy, and that's what I objected to. But you're just proving my point by saying that.
So you got to protect Amy. That's overly sensitive too, brother.
Look at
you're being insensitive and insulting the women in this group doesn't.
Oh, God damn it! Yeah. Oh, she's a woman. Oh no,
Bob. This is we're freaking talking about stuff. We're going into politics. I think you know, the water on the back thing is the ducks, you know, water on the back. We have to blow shit off when people say stuff that upsets us and so on. But
Chuck, I'm just saying that accusing others of being overly sensitive is just a really bad technique.
Okay, that's fine. People are sensitive. People will be the way they will be, and they will respond how they will respond. What I hear Marv asking for is that we I guess just blow stuff off if we find it offensive, unless somehow it's truly a bigoted, extreme, inappropriate
I found
remark.
that statement objectionable.
What did he say exactly? Just to say that just to state your opinion that you think someone was...
Basically he said that Amy was overly sensitive because of something she had said in there.
Oh, that was talking about her reaction to us not being positive.
I was talking about Marvin's statement about being overly sensitive.
Okay. I hear you.
Can't say that about a woman. No. Yeah.
You were saying it about me, weren't you? Overly sensitive.
I use Dan and Amy as examples of oversensitivity, which is that you didn't listen, Bob. You didn't listen.
Okay. Let's end this meeting.
I apologize.
Okay. I think Amy has already left. Okay. So I'll just say in closing that I know John Q. Murray has asked for mediation. And I know Lori Burton could conceivably be brought in. It may be in the end that we do have to all sit down, and this can't get, my proposal to issue an apology from convention is a way for we, the people of the Green Party, to say, we're going to bury the hatchet and not talk about it and not get down to it. However, I think the mediation might be the necessary step, and that would be, we would schedule a time and we would actually kind of relitigate what happened. Because one thing that is disturbing to me is that a talented guy like Dan doesn't have access to the party resources, can't help us develop, communications and so on, and manage our database. So I have a problem with the status quo, and the status quo is Lane Greens are bad. They're over there. We're not going to engage with them. That's a dysfunctional way of being. So, should I proceed and try to get a vote at convention, or should I'm inclined to take this to convention and just have some discussion about it. And maybe what would come out of the convention discussion would be an understanding that we ought to try for mediation. Lori Burton will be the facilitator. And we could, at that point in convention, acknowledge that this remains a sore spot and that we should spend time and resolve it. Because not only do I want the convention, do I want an apology, but I actually want Dan to be reinstated to authority, to the party resources. But this is the problem, according to Natalie, he's not trustworthy. And so she is, in effect, acted as a kind of the jury, the judge and jury. She's boom. As Dan said, she has unilaterally removed him from accessing resources that could help us, whether it would be operating the OPA vote account so we can have a good vote process that's well managed, or whether it's, using our communications through Nation Builder. So this is where I'm at with this. Anybody want to make a final remark, a thought? I see that now Mariah has said that, yes, Jan and Joe's more complicated than Dan, to be honest with you. Or Joe. Bob, let's not go into Joe Rowe right now, but yeah, we need to make room. We need to be decentralized, and we need to be empowering our activists on the front line. That's where I'm at.
I've been saying this, Chuck, for a couple of years now, but the Green Party's identification with Portland is shooting us in both feet. We need to get the identity of the Pacific Green Party back to Eugene. Eugene has a good public image statewide and nationwide. Portland is, God almighty, their politics, it's killing us. It's killing the Pacific Green Party. Nobody else in Oregon wants to be associated with Portland, except for the the wacko liberals that support that crap that's going on in Portland. So how do we get away from Salem, Corvallis, Eugene is a much better identity for the party. So, but I know that this animosity between Eugene and Portland is toxic. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. We got to keep talking. I mean, I think we had a good conversation. Natalie triggered Dan, but
I got nothing against Portland.
Yeah.
It's just the simple fact is this party has a very severe gatekeeping problem.
I think it's
very severe.
I think we have a gatekeeping problem. Brian Setzler complains about that. Joe Rose complained about it, and I that's where we have to figure this out, because we're not going to grow. And I think to Mar's point, oops, let me get this. Sorry about that. I would like to see Green Party leading up on these more media roundtable conversations about key topics, and providing a media service where we, the people, can, use our Zooms to meet up, to talk, to have roundtables, and be present, participate, and so on, and not be suppressed. So. Any other thoughts from anyone? You guys, thanks for showing up and participating. And hard to say where this is going to go, but we do have convention. I'm going to take what I've heard. I'm probably going to, we can talk subsequent, but let's keep moving forward. Okay, everyone.
Sorry, I was just trying to say, Dan, have you considered writing up something? Oh, sorry.
What would you have Dan write up, Bob?
Just something on his experience that you could best tell that it's going for. I mean, he's been through it. I've got a lot of really good advice for other candidates. It would be nice if we could read that somehow.
My experience with what I got lag. I'm not sure whether it was on my end or your end.
Bob, you mean experience running for office, is that correct? Oh, so Bob dropped off, or not entirely. He just disconnected his phone.
No, I'm still here.
Okay. Yeah, clarify what you mean by encouraging Dan to write up his experience.
Oh, well, I just think that he's got a lot of valuable experience. I mean, going through that, running for the position there, I'm sure that he has, learned a lot, and also that he could say, how he thinks that we could have served him better, and what things he's had, because we obviously do not want candidates feeling they're not being supported by the party, regardless of the reasons. So it would be nice if we could, if he could express, nicely what he thinks that would be better going forward, what sort of processes and procedures we should have to assist candidates
right now.
But that's all, just a suggestion.
Like right now on the call, or did you say in writing?
No, I think what I hear Bob saying, inviting you to do, Dan, is he's not asking you to reflect on your experience in laying greens with the Facebook site, but to reflect on your experience as a candidate.
I know, but right now, Bob, or in writing, like some other time, because I can tell you right now, like really briefly.
Well, tell us briefly, and then let's end the call.
Okay, well, I learned how to advertise. I learned PR. I learned how to reach hundreds of thousands of people fairly cheaply, and I learned campaigning, and that is the really important thing to have electoral success. If you're an electoral party, is to learn how to run campaigns and get votes. So that is what I learned. And if you'd like me to write up something in more detail, yes, I'd be glad to do that. Haven't gotten
Yeah,
around to
I
it.
would love to see that because it's obvious you've got valuable experience, and the fact that you got over 1% of the vote, I mean you rock there.
Well, it wasn't that good compared to years like 2016, but I do take solace in the fact that everyone else, every other Green candidate for Senate and Congress did worse. Even
Yeah, it was a bad year for
Matt Ho,
Greens all around.
But yeah, it's easy to do actually. So I can come up with some good advice as soon as I get the time. And I do have a kind of a target fixation on the Ukraine war right now.
Hey, I got to tell you, I agree. Everything I've seen from you about the Ukraine war, I've been in agreement with.
Well, yeah, right. I appreciate that. And I don't know if you use Telegram, but that's where all the breaking news is at. It's where news breaks first. And if you haven't heard, there was a breakthrough allegedly in Solidar just a couple of days ago.
No, I hadn't.
No, well, the defense ministries haven't mentioned it one way or the other, but Wagner PMC broke through at Solidar. They got into the city center, and Ukrainian forces were pushed to the western edge of the city, and they're advancing, and it looks as if they might actually take control of Solidar and Bakhmut within the next week or two. But again, no one knows. There's a lot of rumors and like half-assed information, and that's what it's like to the public.
Well, I follow Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy Dore. They're usually pretty good. And that Australian woman, Caitlin Johnstone.
Caitlin Johnstone. Yeah,
yes.
they come from the right place.
Yes,
but they're getting secondhand information too. Well, I guess they do get primary sources, but the important thing is to get those primary sources.
Well, keep fighting the good fight on that one. I can't believe how the Democrats have become, not only pro censorship but also warmongers. I mean, it's just, it's a total reversal of where Democrats used to be.
A long time ago.
I think this, the opposing imperialism and the endless forever wars probably is the theme and the thing that unites the Greens the most. And we should be really strong on that.
Agree with you.
Ava Bartlett is in, I don't know if you guys look at Ava Bartlett's report. She was in Bukhara. She's back in Donetsk, and man, she's right there. She goes out right out on the street where they're shooting with her camera, and she's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, everyone. Hey, Bob, there's this recording. I don't know if we're ever gonna try to access it, but just end the recording. Let's archive it. If I have a question, I'll track up with you later. Okay, Bob. Good night, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Chuck. Good work, brother. Okay, see you guys.
Enjoy the mountain, Marv. Okay, bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.